Of course, you can say there will always be people who don't want to do something and who have an interest in taking advantage of a system. I believe there will always be people who do that. In general, I would say that we don't experience in Denmark big problems with it. But of course, that debate goes on, and I think if you were to ask a political opponent to me, they would probably think otherwise. They would say that you need to have better initiative to go into job. I would say everyone wants to be in job. And when I say everyone, I know that there will always be a percentage who doesn't want to be. But mostly, then everyone would want him to be in a job, having a work to get up to every morning. Meaning that when I say that, I would at the same time be saying that those people who are outside the job market, the labor market, they have a reason to be it. They would probably be outside of the labor market because of some other problem that might be misuse of something, like being into drugs, into alcohol, something like that. They could be sick, have some kind of either physical or psychological disease. Or it could be other things, but in general, that what we see if we actually look into numbers in Denmark of who is outside the labor market, then we can see, yeah, we do have big groups outside of the labor market. The biggest group is people on retirement and students. They are, of course, outside the labor market, and yes, we do spend money on them because we believe you are entitled to have a good retirement. And we believe that we should help you out being the best student you can, because then you will pay back more to the state and the system, and you will be a happier and a better person. So you can say the people who are left in this system is sort of these two groups. Either you have a reason to be outside, or if you don't have a reason, if your only problem is that you're unemployed, then in general, I would say that most of these people, they want to have a job. The question is the job there? Because most of them cannot take any job out there. They don't have a long education, for example, meaning that the jobs in engineering or the jobs in IT technology, they cannot take them. So they're looking for jobs in sectors where there ain't so many jobs, uneducated jobs. And that would probably be their problem, that they can't find a job. Then we need to help them out with that, I would believe. And also we need to make sure that as long as they're looking for a job, of course we need to make sure that they're actually looking for a job. As long as they're doing that, we should help them out. Both in finding a job, but definitely also making sure that they're not getting extra problems. If they become very poor while they don't have a job and they lose their home, they might lose their family. Then we have a homeless person who doesn't have a family. Maybe he starts drinking, maybe he get PTSD or stress symptoms or something like that. And all of a sudden we have a big case that will cost us more money in the healthcare system. And in my opinion, we need to get around that. We need to make sure that every individual is getting on with their life in the best way. So I would say that you still have a big initiative, but the initiative is that people want a job. And still, there are, of course, limits to everything here, meaning that you can, you'll get a decent amount of money in 2 years when you're unemployed, and then after 2 years you'll get less. So that less is very little actually, meaning that you can still survive, but you will not have a specific good life. And I believe as long as people are there, it's a very, very few people who want to live on a minimum. Mm-hmm. Most people want to have a bit more. They want to make sure that their families are doing okay. They want to make sure that their kids are doing okay. And they know that the economy of a family is affecting everyone. That's the initiative.
The lowest wages are pretty high compared to other countries. So that means that those who employ you, they won't employ you for a bullshit job because it's too expensive to hire you.
Yeah.
And since it's expensive to hire you, you have to set you to something that's useful to.
You can keep going.
Okay, they had to use your work effort for something that's meaningful that they can sell in the market, or in other ways produce for the public sector. So I think the share of bullshit jobs here is lower. For example, you will never see a person here that operates an elevator.
Okay.
But you see that in the US. Why? Because labor is cheap in the US. The lowest wages are very low.
The free programs that we've been talking about, healthcare and school and higher education, are not examples of that at all. In contrary, those are sort of common denominators that actually creates a more level playing field. The things that you can have an argument with, if it sort of hinders initiatives, that is the different benefits that you will pay people that cannot work, for instance, because you have to make sure that the benefits that people that for a different reason cannot work cannot be higher than the people actually working jobs with the lower salaries. It has to be an initiative. There has to be an incentive for people to actually go out working. So the discussion about benefits and what level they're supposed to be on, that's a more highly debated topic, also regarding the initiative issues. But for the sort of free perks, if you would call it that, has not been an issue regarding initiative. We are extremely entrepreneurial economy. There's a high level of willingness to also start new jobs and be involved in startups and stuff like that. So that has certainly not had an effect on that. I think that's not really a stopper for initiatives in people's hearts and desires and what they want to do to create new things or fulfill their lives or whatever.
The economic growth, productivity growth in Sweden and Norway from 1935 till today is higher, not lower, higher than the US. Calculated in a similar way. So these things have been good for economic growth. And it's been economic growth that have been higher than the US, and the gains of economic growth have then been distributed to everybody, not to a super rich upper class, yes, where you have a sort of stagnating middle class like in the US. Here so there have been we have a little bit of an increasing inequality recently, but it's nothing compared to the US. So economic growth has been high. I think it's also another thing to be aware of, that some of these arrangements are pretty good for innovation. For example, that people have insurance can be very good for innovation. You can take chances, you can start up things, because if it really goes bad, you are insured by society that you will never fall below a certain floor in society that will help you if you fail. It's also good for commercial activities. For example, the financial crisis never took hold for example, in Norway and Sweden. Why? Because the population were insured. So if they lost their job, then they had the same income, more or less, because of the insurance device. So that means that they could serve their debt to the banks. So when they had problems, what went on as a bad spiral in many other countries didn't happen here, because they had a high insurance of people, which actually implied that also the banks were insured, because the banks were insured because their customers were insured. And the same happens for other companies. They had customers that were insured, so they didn't lose the income as much as in other countries. So that means that activities went on more or less in the same pace, even though there was sign of financial crisis, but it was dealt with in a very good manner with the cooperation of the interest organization, the unions and the employers association. They had a shared opinion about it, and when you see here, you can't even you see a little bit of the financial crisis, but where other countries went really down and then up again after the financial crisis, you don't see just a small dip. So this is economic stabilize, as we call it, so that you stabilize the economy by this social security, this redistributive policies.